What if I told you that the biggest WNBA controversy of the season just completely collapsed overnight? Not because of league intervention, not because of new evidence, but because the supposed victim herself just obliterated the entire narrative with one devastating statement that nobody saw coming.
This picture is going viral with Bria Hartley with the sinister grin, right? This malevolent look that's on her face right now, clearly smiling after injuring Sophie Cunningham.
That's the viral image that broke the internet. Bria Hartley with what fans called a sinister grin while Sophie Cunningham writhed in pain. Millions viewed it. Thousands demanded justice. The story seemed ironclad until Sophie Cunningham herself stepped forward and said something that changed absolutely everything. I'm Jackson Riley, and if you've been following my channel, you know I specialize in connecting the dots that others miss, filtering through the noise to find the signals that really matter. Today, we're diving deep into how one player's shocking defense of her alleged attacker just exposed the toxic underbelly of WNBA fan culture and revealed why this entire controversy was built on quicksand from day one. But before we unpack this bombshell revelation, smash that subscribe button if you appreciate getting the full story, not just the version that drives clicks. We're building a community of narrative analysts who want the real intelligence behind these stories. Here's what happened that everyone else missed. While content creators across the platform were building 20-minute videos calling Bria Hartley the dirtiest player in the league, while fans demanded suspensions and the WNBA launched investigations, Sophie Cunningham quietly appeared on her podcast and dropped a truth bomb that should have ended this controversy immediately. She called Bria Hartley her really good friend. She explicitly stated there was no ill intent in the collision. She asked fans to stop criticizing Hartley. The supposed victim was defending her alleged attacker, and somehow, this crucial piece of information got buried under an avalanche of manufactured outrage. Let me paint the picture of what really went down on August 17th, because the story you've been told is only half the truth.
Sophie Cunningham, let's be clear here. Sophie Cunningham was targeted. Let's be very, very clear here. But Sophie Cunningham was flat out targeted by a dirty, dirty player.
That's the raw audio of Sophie Cunningham in genuine pain. There's no denying the severity of what happened. A season-ending MCL tear that crushed Indiana's playoff hopes and ended one of their most valuable players' year. The injury was real, the pain was authentic, and the consequences were devastating. But here's where the narrative started spinning out of control. Social media immediately seized on that viral image of Hartley appearing to smile while Cunningham was down. The temperature of the online conversation went nuclear in minutes.
Play that just occurred.
That's like she tries to slide over right there, and Hartley just kind of falls and makes collision with that lower leg. You see her immediately grab it. And she went down hard and was clearly in a lot of pain.
This is the 6th time they smile back and cheer on our Indiana Fever players getting assaulted. The fury was palpable, the emotion was real, but what nobody realized was that they were building a conspiracy theory on quicksand. Now, let's talk about why this story exploded the way it did, because this wasn't really about basketball. This was about something much deeper brewing in WNBA culture that nobody wants to acknowledge. The digital breadcrumbs lead to a fascinating pattern. When you map the most vocal critics of Bria Hartley during this controversy, you'll find they overwhelmingly fall into one specific demographic: newer WNBA fans who arrived with Caitlin Clark. Meanwhile, the defenders? Longtime WNBA supporters who've watched the league for years. This isn't speculation, it's data you can verify yourself by scrolling through the comment sections. The outrage wasn't just about one collision. It was the latest battlefield in an ongoing cultural war between WNBA's traditional fan base and the massive influx of new supporters who arrived this season. Here's what really happened. A routine basketball play became a Rorschach test for deeper tensions about who belongs in this league, whose opinions matter, and what standards should apply to different players. The Hartley-Cunningham incident became a proxy war for much larger cultural anxieties.
Oh, and Cunningham is down. My goodness. Should be. In a scary moment as we went to commercial, Sophie Cunningham hit the floor hard and she is being helped off the floor, heading back to the locker room.
Sophie Cunningham was targeted, y'all. I'm telling you right now, Sophie Cunningham was targeted by Bria Hartley. The conviction was absolute, the language was definitive, but the foundation was crumbling even as these words were spoken. But here's the twist that changes everything. While creators were building their cases for intentional targeting, while fans were cataloging Hartley's history of controversial plays, while family members were posting angry messages on social media, Sophie Cunningham herself was preparing to demolish their entire argument. On her podcast, recorded just days after the incident, Cunningham made statements that should have ended this controversy immediately. She described Hartley as a really good friend. She explicitly rejected the narrative of malicious intent. She asked her own supporters to stop the hate campaign. Think about the implications of that for a moment. The supposed victim was actively defending the person accused of intentionally injuring her. Either Sophie Cunningham is naive about her own assault, or the narrative everyone built was fundamentally flawed from the beginning. But here's what's truly revealing about this situation. Even after Cunningham's defense became public, many fans refused to accept it. The online temperature didn't cool down. The demands for suspension didn't stop. Because for many people involved in this controversy, the truth was less important than the narrative they needed to believe. This brings us to a critical question that goes far beyond basketball. What happens when the supposed victim's voice gets drowned out by people claiming to defend her? What does it mean when fans become more invested in their version of events than the actual person who lived through them? The answer reveals something deeply troubling about how viral outrage operates in sports media. Once a narrative reaches critical mass, it becomes self-sustaining. Facts become secondary to emotional investment. The actual people involved become props in larger cultural battles they never signed up for. Let's examine the mechanics of how this false narrative spread so effectively, because understanding this pattern is crucial for recognizing it in future controversies. First, you had the viral image, Hartley's alleged smile captured at precisely the wrong moment. Visual evidence is incredibly powerful, even when context is missing. That single frame became the foundation for everything that followed. Second, you had Hartley's history of controversial plays. Past incidents with Angel Reese, Rebecca Allen, and others created a pattern that made the malicious intent theory feel credible. Pattern recognition is a powerful psychological force. Once we see a trend, we start interpreting ambiguous events as confirmation. Third, you had family involvement. When Cunningham's mother and sister posted critical messages about Hartley and the officiating, it added emotional weight and legitimacy to the outrage. Family members defending their loved ones feels authentic in ways that fan reactions don't. Fourth, you had the cultural warfare element. Existing tensions between fan groups created an audience primed to interpret this incident through the lens of their broader grievances about league favoritism and player treatment. Finally, you had the echo chamber effect. Social media algorithms amplified the most engaging content, which meant the angriest, most definitive takes got the widest reach. Nuanced analysis doesn't drive clicks the way explosive accusations do. But here's where it gets really interesting. Despite all these factors working in favor of the malicious intent narrative, it still couldn't survive contact with the truth. Sophie Cunningham's simple statement that Hartley was her friend and the collision was accidental should have been the end of the story. The fact that it wasn't tells us something important about the current state of WNBA discourse. We're living through a moment where manufactured controversy often overshadows actual basketball, where cultural battles get fought through player narratives, and where the people most directly affected by these stories sometimes have the least control over how they're told.
Bria Hartley deserves zero benefit of the doubt. And Sophie Cunningham's family not too happy.
Coach Stephanie White's emotional response to her team's resilience provides a perfect counterpoint to all this manufactured drama. They got something inside of them that you just can't teach. That's what real basketball character looks like, not the soap opera narratives that dominate social media. Speaking of real basketball, let's talk about what actually mattered from that game, because while everyone was arguing about alleged dirty plays, Kelsey Mitchell was putting together one of the most spectacular performances in WNBA.
Making all kind of excuses to say that Bria Hartley is not a dirty player. Let me tell y'all something, man. Come on in here. Come on in here, man. Let me tell y'all something. If it quacks like a duck, walks like a duck, eats like a duck. It's a duck, man. Come on, man. She is the dirtiest player in the WNBA right now, winning the trophy. All right? Winning the trophy for it. Don't sit here and try to tell me Bria Hartley is not a dirty player.
History. Mitchell's 38-point career-high performance, leading the Fever back from a 21-point deficit for the largest comeback in franchise history, is the story that deserved our attention. That's basketball excellence that should be celebrated, analyzed, and remembered long after this manufactured controversy fades. But that performance got overshadowed by conspiracy theories and cultural warfare. And that pattern, real basketball excellence being buried under manufactured drama, is becoming increasingly common in WNBA coverage. Now let's talk about what this revelation means for the future of WNBA discourse, because Sophie Cunningham's defense of Bria Hartley exposes problems that go far beyond one incident. First, it demonstrates how social media outrage can completely divorce itself from the perspectives of the people it claims to defend. Cunningham asked fans to stop criticizing Hartley, but many ignored her direct request. The conversation had become more about the participants' emotional investment than about supporting the actual player who was injured. Second, it reveals how quickly viral narratives can become self-sustaining regardless of factual accuracy. Even with Cunningham's explicit rejection of the malicious intent theory, many content creators and fans continued promoting it because they had too much invested in their version of events to back down. Third, it shows how cultural tensions within WNBA fandom are being projected onto individual incidents in ways that distort actual analysis. The Hartley-Cunningham collision became a proxy battle for much larger disagreements about league culture, fan behavior, and player treatment standards. This pattern is dangerous for the league's long-term health. When every physical play becomes a cultural battlefield, when routine basketball contact gets interpreted through the lens of broader grievances, when player safety discussions get hijacked by fan warfare, that's a recipe for toxicity that will drive away casual viewers and create hostile environments for the athletes. The WNBA announced a task force earlier this year specifically to combat online harassment directed at players. That initiative was created because multiple players reported increased racist, homophobic, and misogynistic attacks. Now we're seeing how that harassment culture extends into manufactured controversies that ignore the actual voices of the players involved. Sophie Cunningham's friendship revelation should be a wake-up call for everyone participating in WNBA discourse. When the supposed victim has to defend her alleged attacker against her own supporters, something has gone seriously wrong with how we process and discuss these stories. But here's what gives me hope about this situation. The truth eventually surfaced. Cunningham's authentic voice eventually broke through the noise, and now we have a perfect case study of how viral outrage can be completely disconnected from reality. The question is whether we'll learn from this example or repeat the same patterns with the next controversy that captures our attention. Because there will be a next controversy, physical basketball creates incidents, and social media creates amplification. The combination is inevitable. What we can control is how we respond. We can demand more nuanced analysis instead of rewarding the most inflammatory takes. We can prioritize player voices over fan theories. We can recognize when cultural battles are being fought through individual stories and resist getting pulled into those proxy wars. Most importantly, we can remember that behind every viral controversy are real people whose lives and careers are affected by how these narratives develop. Sophie Cunningham didn't ask to become a symbol in WNBA culture wars. She just wanted to play basketball and defend her friend when people mischaracterized their relationship. The fact that her defense of Hartley got buried under manufactured outrage should concern anyone who cares about the league's discourse environment. We're creating a culture where authentic player voices get drowned out by viral narratives, where friendship and sportsmanship get sacrificed for engagement metrics. That's not sustainable, and it's not fair to the athletes who make this league special. So what's the lesson here? Sometimes the most important story isn't the one that generates the most clicks. Sometimes the truth is quieter than the controversy, and sometimes defending someone requires challenging the narrative that's supposedly defending you. Sophie Cunningham showed real courage by defending Bria Hartley against her own supporters. She chose friendship over manufactured drama, truth over convenient narratives, and authentic relationship over social media validation. That's the kind of character that actually matters in sports, not the viral moments or the inflammatory takes, but the quiet decisions to do the right thing even when it's not popular. As we move forward, let's remember this lesson. Let's prioritize player voices over fan theories. Let's choose nuanced analysis over inflammatory content, and let's build a discourse environment that serves the athletes instead of exploiting them for engagement. Because at the end of the day, that's what being a real fan means, supporting the players, not the narratives we project onto them. What do you think about Sophie Cunningham's defense of Bria Hartley? Does this change how you view the original controversy? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one and genuinely value your perspectives on these complex situations. If this kind of deep dive analysis resonates with you, subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss when we uncover the stories behind the stories. Share this video with anyone who needs to understand how viral outrage operates and why player voices should always be centered in these discussions. And remember, the truth is always worth pursuing, even when it's less dramatic than the alternatives. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next investigation.